Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Life has a way of humbling you when you least expect it. After 5 years of folding shirts and dealing with angry customers over expired coupons, I decided I was done with retail. I watched my friends move forward with their careers while I stayed stuck in the same dead-end job making $12 an hour. That's when I made the choice to go back to school for accounting. The problem was money. I had about $3,000 in savings, but not enough to cover tuition and a decent apartment. My parents had retired to a small town 3 hours away, so moving back with them wasn't an option. I needed to be close to campus. That's how I ended up in this weird shared student apartment in the basement of an old building downtown. The rent was $450 a month, which was the cheapest I could find anywhere near the university. It wasn't terrible, honestly. Each of us had our own room with a lock, which was the main thing. The rooms were tiny, barely enough space for a bed and a desk, but it was mine. There were 5 of us total sharing the space. We had a communal kitchen and 2 bathrooms that we all used. The arrangement was pretty hands-off. Nobody really talked to each other except for the occasional text in our group chat about splitting the internet bill or reminding someone to take out the trash. We each paid $15 a month for the shared internet connection. It was lonely sometimes, but I was so busy between classes and my part-time job at a campus coffee shop that I barely had time to think about it. My schedule was brutal. I had morning classes 3 days a week starting at 8 a.m., then I'd rush to work the evening shift at the coffee shop from 4 p.m. until 9 or sometimes 10 p.m. at night. I was making minimum wage plus tips, which usually added up to about $80 to $90 a week if I was lucky. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and starving. I've been living off ramen and whatever was on sale at the discount grocery store. My weekly food budget was $30, sometimes less if tuition payments were due. My budget was so tight that I had to plan every single purchase. I'd learned to check expiration dates for markdowns and buy the dented cans because they were 50 cents cheaper. This night, I'd had a really long day. My accounting professor had given us a massive project that was due in 2 weeks, worth 30% of our final grade. I'd spent my whole shift at work getting yelled at by stressed-out students ordering complicated drinks. One guy had made me remake his latte 3 times because it wasn't hot enough. I clocked out at 9:30 p.m. and practically dragged myself home. The walk from the coffee shop to my apartment was only 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. When I got to the apartment, I was so hungry my hands were shaking. I hadn't eaten anything since noon except for a stale muffin someone left in the break room. I opened the freezer and saw the frozen pizza I'd bought 3 days earlier. It was one of the nicer brands, not the cheapest cardboard stuff. It had cost me $7.49. I justified the extra $2 because I'd gotten a decent tip at work that week, a full $20 bill from a regular customer. I know it sounds pathetic to get excited about a $7 frozen pizza, but that's where I was at in life. I preheated the oven to 375 degrees, like the box said, slid the pizza in, and set a timer on my phone for 25 minutes. Then I went back to my room to change out of my work clothes and try to decompress. I could still smell coffee on my shirt. About 12 minutes into the cooking time, I heard the oven door creak open. That oven was ancient and made this awful grinding noise every time anyone touched it. The landlord had promised to replace it 6 months ago but never did. I heard footsteps in the kitchen, some clattering around, and then a few seconds later, I heard one of the bedroom doors down the hall close. It was the guy who lived in the room at the far end. I'd maybe spoken to him twice since moving in 2 months ago. He was some business major who always seemed to be on his phone talking about stocks or whatever. I got up and walked out to the kitchen to check what was going on. When I opened the oven, I saw that someone had shoved a huge baking tray full of raw chicken breasts onto the rack next to my pizza. There had to be at least 6 or 7 pieces of chicken on there. I looked at the temperature dial and my stomach dropped. It was cranked up to 425 degrees. I stood there for a second trying to process what had just happened. This guy had just opened the oven, seen my food cooking, and decided to throw his stuff in there and change the temperature without saying a single word to me. Not a knock on my door, not a text, nothing. My pizza needed to cook at 375 degrees. His chicken needed 425. He'd just decided his dinner was more important than mine. I went back to my room and waited for my timer to go off, getting angrier by the minute. I thought about knocking on his door to say something, but I was too tired to deal with confrontation. When the timer finally beeped, I went out to get my pizza. The edges were black and smoking. The cheese had gone from golden brown to dark brown and crusty. The crust was burned to the point where it crumbled when I touched it. I pulled it out and just stared at it. It was still technically edible, but it was ruined. $7.49 down the drain. I took a bite and it tasted like burnt disappointment. I stood there in that tiny kitchen, eating my destroyed pizza, and I felt something break inside me. I was working myself to death, barely sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, eating garbage, living in a basement with strangers, and I couldn't even have one decent meal without some inconsiderate jerk ruining it. This was supposed to be my one nice thing for the week. I looked at the oven. His chicken was still in there, cooking away at 425 degrees. The timer he'd set showed another 15 minutes remaining. A thought crossed my mind. A terrible, petty, absolutely justified thought. I walked over to the oven and cranked the dial all the way up to 500 degrees, the highest setting it could go. Then I went back to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed eating the rest of my terrible pizza, listening. I could hear the oven humming louder with the increased heat. After about 10 minutes, I heard the smoke alarm start shrieking. Then I heard his door fly open and panicked footsteps running to the kitchen. I could hear him swearing under his breath when he discovered what had happened to his dinner. I waited a few more seconds, then stepped out into the hallway. The lights were off except for the glow coming from the kitchen. I could see him frantically trying to scrape blackened chicken off his baking tray, smoke still pouring out of the oven. The chicken was completely charred, basically inedible. I called out to him in a slightly ominous tone, asking if everything was all right. He jumped and turned around. His face was red and sweaty from the heat and smoke. He stammered something about being fine, saying he'd just overcooked his chicken a bit. I told him that was rough and that I hated when that happened. I mentioned that it was especially bad when you were looking forward to a meal and it got ruined. He just nodded quickly, not making eye contact. I stood there for another second, just watching him struggle with his ruined dinner. He was trying to salvage the chicken, but it was beyond saving. Then I turned around and went back to my room without another word. I heard him scraping at the pan for another few minutes before giving up. His door closed a little while later, and I heard him leave the apartment, probably to grab fast food somewhere. That was going to cost him at least $15. I moved out about a month later when I found a cheaper room closer to campus for $375 a month. The new place was smaller, but I had my own bathroom. I'm 23 and I drive a small Honda Accord. It's not much, but it gets me where I need to go. About 2 months ago, my friend asked if I could give her rides to work since we live pretty close to each other and our shifts start around the same time. She's 22 and doesn't have a car right now, so I figured why not help out. We agreed that she'd chip in for gas every 2 weeks, and I'd swing by her place on my way to work. Seemed like a fair deal, and honestly, I thought it would be nice to have company on the drive. The first month went pretty smoothly. She was usually ready when I got there, we'd chat on the way to work, and everything felt balanced. I didn't mind helping her out at all. But then something shifted after that first month, and it became a real problem. She started being late. Not just a minute or two, here and there, but consistently late. Every single morning I'd pull up to her apartment, text her that I was outside, and then I'd sit there waiting. And waiting. The first few times it was 10 minutes. Then it became 15 minutes. Sometimes even longer than that. I'd be sitting in my car, watching the clock, knowing I was going to be late to work because of it. I tried to be patient. I really did. I tell myself that maybe she overslept, or maybe she was having a rough morning, but it kept happening. Every day the same thing. I'd text, she'd say she was coming, and then I'd wait way too long. My boss even pulled me aside once and mentioned that I've been coming in late more often. That was a huge wake-up call for me. I can't afford to lose this job, and I definitely can't afford to get written up for tardiness when it's not even my fault. So I decided I needed to talk to her about it. I didn't want to be mean or anything, but I had to set some boundaries. Last Friday, before I left my place, I sent her a text explaining the situation. I told her that I could only wait 5 minutes max because I couldn't risk being late to work again. I thought I was being reasonable. I thought she'd understand. When I got to her place that morning, I texted her like usual to let her know I was there. She responded pretty quickly, saying she just needed 1 second. I looked at the time and decided to give her exactly what I'd promised: 5 minutes. I sat there scrolling through my phone, watching the minutes tick by. When 5 minutes passed, I called her. No answer. I waited another minute because I'm not completely heartless, and I called again. Still nothing. At that point, I knew I had to make a choice: stay and definitely be late, or leave and protect my job. I left. I felt guilty the whole drive to work. I kept checking my phone at red lights, half expecting her to call back, but nothing. I got to work right on time, which felt like a small victory, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to be upset. About 15 minutes later, my phone absolutely exploded. Message after message started coming through. She was furious. She told me I had abandoned her and left her to walk to work in the heat. She said she missed the first part of her shift and that it was all my fault. The messages just kept coming, one after another, each one angrier than the last. I finally responded when I had a break. I apologized but reminded her that I had warned her this morning and multiple times before. I explained that I couldn't keep being late to work because of her. She shot back that I should have just waited because that's what real friends do. They don't just leave each other stranded like that. I tried to explain that I had waited long enough. I reminded her that I had told her I could only wait 5 minutes, and that I had even called her twice with no answer. She just dismissed everything I said and told me what a terrible friend I was. That was the last thing she said to me. She hasn't spoken to me since Friday. Complete silence. At first, I thought maybe she just needed time to cool off, but it's been days now and nothing. Then yesterday, one of our mutual friends reached out to me. She said that my friend had been venting to her about what happened. According to this mutual friend, I was being too harsh. She told me I should have just waited the extra 5 minutes to keep the peace. She made it sound like I was the one being unreasonable, like I should have just sacrificed my job security to make sure my friend got to work on time. That really got to me. Now I'm second-guessing everything. Maybe I should have waited longer. Maybe I should have given her one more chance. But then I think about all the times I was late because of her. All the times I sat in my car, stressed out, watching the minutes pass. All the times I walked into work late and had to deal with my boss's disappointed look. I know life happens. I know people run late sometimes. But this wasn't a one-time thing. This was every single day for weeks. And the thing that really bothers me is that she never seemed to care about my time. She never apologized for making me wait. She never acknowledged that her being late was affecting me, too. It was always just expected that I'd sit there and wait no matter how long it took. The gas money thing is another issue I didn't even bring up. She was supposed to help with gas every 2 weeks, but she's been pretty inconsistent with that too. I didn't want to pile on more complaints, but it's worth mentioning that this arrangement was supposed to benefit both of us, and lately it's felt pretty one-sided. I don't think I'm a bad friend. I genuinely wanted to help her out. But I also don't think it's fair to expect me to risk my job just to accommodate her inability to be on time. I set a clear boundary, I communicated it ahead of time, and when she didn't respect it, I followed through. Now she's not talking to me, and apparently some people think I'm the bad guy here. I'm starting to wonder if I really was too rigid about the whole thing. But deep down, I don't think I did anything wrong. I just wish she could see it from my perspective. I started going to that gym after my doctor told me I needed to get my blood pressure under control. I was never really into fitness before that, but once I got into the routine, I actually started enjoying it. Lost some weight, felt better, made some friends. The gym became my second home. I'm not a personal trainer or anything like that. I work in accounting during the day. But after spending so much time at the gym, I picked up a lot of knowledge about proper form and different exercises. The regulars knew me, and sometimes people would ask me for advice. I never minded helping out. It felt good to share what I'd learned, and honestly, the gym community had been so welcoming to me when I started that I wanted to pay it forward. This all happened on a Tuesday evening. I just finished my usual cardio warm-up and was heading toward the free weight section when I noticed this woman struggling with a barbell. She looked frustrated, kept adjusting her grip, and her form was all wrong. I'd seen her around a few times over the past couple weeks, but we'd never talked. I walked over and asked if she needed any help. She looked at me and said she couldn't seem to get it right and her back kept hurting. I told her stance was a bit off and offered to show her the proper form. I demonstrated how to keep her back straight and engage her core. She tried it again, and it looked much better. She thanked me and said it was so much easier now. I told her it was no problem and reminded her to keep her core tight. I moved on to my own workout, did some bench presses, worked on my shoulders. About 20 minutes later, she came over to where I was resting between sets. She asked if I could help her with a leg press machine because she wasn't sure she was doing it right. I agreed and followed her over to the leg press. I watched her do a few reps and noticed her form needed some adjustment. I explained what she needed to change and she seemed grateful. This happened 2 more times over the next half hour. She kept coming over asking for help with different exercises. I didn't mind at first. Helping people was something I enjoyed. But then things got weird. I was doing some lat pull downs when she appeared next to me again. She asked me what was next on her workout plan. I asked her what she meant. She clarified that she wanted to know what she should do next since I was her trainer. I told her I wasn't a trainer and that I was just helping her out with some form corrections. Her face changed. She looked annoyed. She asked me what I meant by saying I wasn't her trainer when I'd been training her for the past hour. I explained that I was just giving her some friendly advice and that I wasn't a personal trainer or an employee of the gym. She said it was ridiculous and complained that I couldn't just start training someone and then refuse to finish. I clarified again that I wasn't training her and had only been helping out. I suggested that if she wanted a real trainer, she should talk to the front desk where they had certified trainers available. She insisted she didn't want another trainer because I'd already learned her routine. I told her I didn't have a routine for her and had only been correcting her form on a few exercises. She was getting louder now. A few people nearby had stopped their workouts to watch. She said fine and that she didn't need my help anyway. She stormed off toward the free weights area. I went back to my workout trying to shake off the awkward encounter. About 10 minutes later, I was grabbing my water bottle when I heard heavy footsteps behind me. I turned around just in time to see her charging at me with a barbell raised above her head like a baseball bat. Her face was red, twisted with anger. She screamed that I didn't just abandon clients. She swung the barbell at my head. I barely had time to react. I threw my arm up instinctively to protect myself. The metal bar connected with my wrist with a sickening crack. The pain was immediate and intense. The barbell clattered to the floor. I stumbled backward, clutching my wrist. It was already starting to swell. I yelled at her, asking what was wrong with her. She tried to pick up the barbell again, but 2 guys who'd been working out nearby rushed over and grabbed her arms. She was screaming, thrashing, trying to break free. She kept yelling that they should let her go and that I owed her a training session because she'd paid me. One of the guys holding her told her she hadn't paid anyone and that they'd seen the whole thing. The gym manager came running over, phone already in his hand. Someone had called the cops. They arrived within minutes. I was sitting on a bench, my wrist throbbing, while other gym members stood around me. One woman had gotten me some ice. The cops talked to witnesses first. Multiple people explained what happened, how I'd just been helping her out and she'd attacked me out of nowhere. They put her in handcuffs while she continued yelling about how I was her trainer and I'd abandoned her. One of the cops told her that everyone there was saying I wasn't a trainer and had just been giving her advice. She insisted they were all lying and that I'd taken her money. The cop asked if she'd actually given me any money. She went quiet for a moment. She admitted she hadn't, but said that wasn't the point. They led her out of the gym. The paramedics arrived and checked my wrist. It was definitely broken. They took me to the emergency room where I got x-rays and a cast. Turned out she'd fractured my wrist in 2 places. I pressed charges. My lawyer said it was assault with a deadly weapon since she'd used the barbell. The gym security footage showed everything clearly. She ended up taking a plea deal and got 6 months in jail plus anger management classes and restitution for my medical bills. My wrist took 3 months to heal properly. I couldn't work out during that time, which was frustrating. When I finally got back to the gym, the staff told me she'd been banned for life from the entire chain. I still help people at the gym when they ask for advice, but now I make it very clear from the start that I'm not a trainer, I don't charge money, and I'm just offering friendly tips. I was born with a condition called hip dysplasia. Basically, my hip joints never formed properly. My parents noticed something was off when I was a toddler and couldn't walk quite right. But back then, the doctor said we just have to monitor it. Growing up was hard. Other kids would ask why I walked funny, and I never really had a good answer that satisfied them. By middle school, I'd learned to just ignore the stares and comments. By the time I hit my 20s, the pain was unbearable. Some days I could barely get out of bed. I tried physical therapy for 2 years. Injections, special exercises, you name it. Nothing worked. The pain kept getting worse, spreading from my hips down through my legs. So at 32 years old, I had to get a total hip replacement. Not exactly something you expect to deal with before you're even middle-aged. The surgery itself cost nearly $30,000, even with insurance. I had to take 6 weeks off work for recovery. The surgery helped with the pain, but it left me with a leg length difference. My right leg ended up about 3 inches longer than my left. The doctors did what they could, but sometimes that's just how it goes. They explained that achieving perfect symmetry after that kind of surgery is nearly impossible. So now I walk with a noticeable limp. I've tried different shoe inserts and adjustments, and they help a bit, but the limp is still there. Always will be. Am I self-conscious about it? Absolutely. I hate when people stare. I hate when kids point and their parents quickly shush them. I especially hate when adults ask invasive questions like they're entitled to know my entire medical history just because they're curious. For the past 6 years, I've been working at a residential care facility on the east side of town. Most days are pretty routine. Medication rounds, checking in on patients, coordinating with families, that sort of thing. The pay is decent, about $18 an hour, and the benefits are good. This incident happened on a Tuesday afternoon around 2:15. I was working my usual shift when my supervisor called and asked me to head over to the main building to pick up some paperwork for an incoming resident. We were expecting a new patient to arrive the next morning, and I needed to review their medical history and care requirements. Our facility has 2 buildings, the main one where administration works and the secondary building where I'm usually stationed. They're connected by a parking lot that takes about 5 minutes to walk across. It's not a huge distance, but with my limp, it takes me a bit longer than most people. I clocked out for my break and started making my way across the lot. It was a nice day, not too hot, probably around 75 degrees. I was just thinking about what I'd have for lunch when I heard the sound of a motorized scooter behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. Lots of people use mobility scooters around here. Staff, residents, visitors. We probably have about 20 scooters on the property at any given time. But then I noticed the scooter was staying right behind me, matching my pace exactly. I looked back and saw it was a man probably in his 50s with a smug sort of expression on his face. He had on khaki pants and a polo shirt. He wasn't a resident or anyone I recognized from the facility, maybe a visitor, I thought. He pulled up alongside me and commented on what a beautiful day it was. I kept walking but gave a polite response because, well, I work in customer service, essentially. You don't want to be rude to visitors, especially when they might be family members of residents. I agreed that it was nice and told him to have a good day. I tried to pick up my pace a little, but with my limp, there's only so fast I can go. He stayed right beside me on that scooter, keeping pace effortlessly. He asked if I worked there and mentioned he was visiting his uncle in room 212, saying it was a real nice place. I told him that was great and hoped his uncle was doing well. I was giving short answers on purpose, hoping he'd take the hint. He didn't. Then he started telling me how pretty I was. He went on about how I was really, really pretty, and that I had a beautiful smile. He said I must hear that all the time. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was heading. I've dealt with this kind of thing before. Random men who think a polite greeting is an invitation to hit on you. It happens more often than you'd think in this job. I kept my eyes forward and didn't respond. I told him I was actually on my break and needed to get the paperwork, trying to excuse myself. I tried to angle away from him, but he just steered the scooter to stay beside me. The main building was still another minute or two away, and I was starting to feel genuinely uncomfortable. My heart was beating faster. He got defensive, saying he was just being friendly and asking if a guy couldn't give a compliment. He said I should smile more and not be so serious. I didn't answer. I just wanted to get to the building and be done with this conversation. I was mentally calculating how much farther I had to walk. Then he said something that made my blood boil. He acknowledged that I was pretty, but then asked why I was limping and what was wrong with my leg. He said it in this tone like he was genuinely concerned, but I could tell he was just curious. I stopped walking, just completely stopped and turned to look at him. The audacity of this man to follow me across a parking lot, make unwanted comments about my appearance, refuse to leave me alone, and then have the nerve to ask about my disability like it was any of his business. He looked at me expectantly, like he'd just asked the most normal question in the world, like he was entitled to an explanation. I was done, completely done. Something in me just snapped, and instead of giving him the polite brush-off I'd been planning, a different response came out. I looked him straight in the eye and told him very calmly and seriously that I got shot. His expression changed instantly. The smug smile dropped right off his face. His eyes went wide. I continued, saying that if he thought I had it rough, he should have seen what I did to the other guy. I let the words hang in the air for a long moment, maintaining eye contact the entire time. His face went pale. Then I wished him a great day in the sweetest voice I could manage. I turned and continued walking toward the main building. I didn't look back, but I heard the scooter's motor rev up as he quickly drove off in the opposite direction. He was moving fast, probably going 15 miles per hour at least. When I got inside, I had to take a minute in the bathroom to calm down. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline rush. I looked at myself in the mirror and almost started laughing. I've seen that man at the facility several times since then. He really does have an uncle who's a resident here, so he visits occasionally. I see him maybe once every 2 weeks or so. Every single time he sees me, he immediately looks away and finds somewhere else to be. If we're in the same hallway, he'll turn around and go the other direction. He won't make eye contact. He won't speak to me. He practically breaks his neck trying to avoid crossing my path. One time I saw him waiting for an elevator, and when the doors opened and he saw me inside, he mumbled something about taking the stairs instead. I've been working in medical offices for about 6 years now. Started right out of college with my certification, eager to make a difference and all that. My first job was at this clinic about 20 miles from my apartment. It wasn't ideal with the commute, but I loved the work, and the patients became like family to me. I spent 4 years there, learning the ropes, getting to know everyone's quirks, understanding how the office flowed. Then I got transferred to a location closer to home, which was great for my gas budget and my sanity during rush hour. Even though I'd been at the new location for 2 years, I still had this soft spot for my old office. Those people trained me, helped me grow, and I genuinely cared about them. So when I heard they were moving to a new building just 5 miles away, I immediately wanted to help. I mean, moving an entire medical office is no joke. You've got equipment, files, supplies, furniture, and everything has to be organized so you can hit the ground running at the new place. I started offering my help about 2 weeks before the move. I told my old supervisor I could come by after my shifts, use my days off, whatever they needed. I've got a truck, a decent-sized one that my dad helped me buy last year, and I figured it would be perfect for hauling boxes and smaller equipment. But every time I brought it up, I got brushed off with vague responses about how they had it under control. Yesterday was supposed to be one of their big packing days. They'd scheduled it so most of the non-essential stuff would get boxed up while still seeing a reduced patient load. I happened to be there covering a shift because one of their front desk people called in sick. Perfect timing, I thought. I can actually be useful. Around mid-morning, I noticed them struggling with organizing boxes in the break room. I walked over during a lull and offered to run to the supply store to grab more boxes since I knew they were doing a sale on moving supplies. My old supervisor barely looked up from her clipboard and told me they had enough boxes, but thanks anyway. I pressed on, mentioning that my truck was outside if they needed to start hauling anything to the new place and that I could take a load during lunch. She dismissed this too, saying they had a plan for that and I should just focus on the front desk. I shrugged and went back to my station. Fine, maybe they really did have it handled. But when the day went on, I could see they were clearly overwhelmed. There were only 4 people trying to pack up an entire office while also managing patients who kept walking in. One of the medical assistants kept asking where certain supplies should go, and nobody seemed to have a clear answer. Around 2 in the afternoon, I tried again. I told them seriously that I had time right now, and offered to at least help label some boxes or organize the supply closet since I knew where everything was. That's when my supervisor had enough. She told me to sit there and deal with patients. She said they didn't need my help with the packing, and that they had it under control. Her tone made it crystal clear. This wasn't a polite decline anymore. This was a directive. She didn't want my help, period. Maybe she felt like I was overstepping since I didn't work there full-time anymore. Or maybe she just wanted to prove they could handle it without me. Whatever the reason, I got the message loud and clear. I told her I understood and that there was no problem. Then I turned around, sat back down at my desk, and decided I was going to do exactly what I was told. I would sit there and deal with patients. Nothing more, nothing less. About 30 minutes later, I heard someone struggling with a heavy box of equipment near the hallway. One of my coworkers called out asking if I could grab the other end. I looked up from my computer where I was conveniently updating patient files and apologized, saying I had to finish entering these notes before the next patient arrived. She insisted it would only take 2 seconds, but I told her I couldn't because I was busy with patients like I was supposed to be. I could feel her staring at me, but I kept my eyes on the screen. She eventually huffed and dragged the box herself, though it took her 3 times as long. Later, the supervisor came up front with a stack of framed certificates from the walls. She asked me where they had decided these should go, whether in the box with office decor or the one for the doctor's office. I looked up, shrugged, and went back to typing, telling her I wasn't sure. She reminded me that I had packed these last time we rearranged. I asked if I did, said I didn't really remember, and suggested maybe she should check her packing list. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the realization dawning. But she didn't say anything, just walked away with the frames. This continued for the rest of the afternoon. Every time someone called my name for help, I suddenly had a phone call to make, or a patient folder to find, or paperwork that absolutely needed my immediate attention. I watched them struggle with furniture, saw them make multiple trips when one truckload could have done it, observed them getting more and more frustrated with each other. Near the end of the day, when I was getting ready to leave, the supervisor approached me. She asked if I was going to help with anything or what. I looked at her with the most innocent expression I could manage and told her, nope. I said I was going to sit there and deal with patients like I was told, and that, like she said, they didn't need my help. Her face went through about 5 different emotions before settling on annoyed resignation. But what could she say? She'd made it clear I wasn't needed, so I did exactly what she asked. Today I came in for another coverage shift. Guess who showed up hobbling through the door, one hand on her lower back, wincing with every step? My supervisor looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. All that heavy lifting without proper help had done a number on her back. She told me she thought she pulled something yesterday. Her voice strained with pain. I said, oh no, that was terrible. I suggested she should probably sit down and rest, and maybe let other people handle the heavy work from now on. I kept my face perfectly neutral, but inside I was smiling. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.